What's up, guys? With all this downtime between when I finish the Saratoga card for tomorrow and the actual post time tomorrow, I had a lot of time to really look my card over, and also I got an email yesterday from somebody who has been using the follow the figures, and I know I haven't talked a lot about follow the figures lately. In fact, that was my second tutorial I put out. The matrix system was in book form originally back in like 2000, I want to say 2013 or 14, and then I put the follow the figures PDF tutorial together, and then I followed that up with the matrix system on PDF as well. And one of the things, my earliest videos are always done with follow the figures. So the follow the figures on top of the tutorial, the videos will show you how to do the follow the figures methods and the steps as well. But one of the things that I mentioned in most of my follow the figures videos was that I never really use follow the figures as a standalone method to handicap a race. I always use it for supplemental. And the email that I got, the question was, there was a clarification question on the follow the figures, and then also he asked me, do you still use this method, and how often do you use it? Well, the answer is I use it for supplemental reasons, supplemental purposes. I know you haven't seen me using it a lot lately on the videos because I've been really trying to highlight the whole newest grid that we have with the TC ratings. But since I had some downtime, what I did was I ran each of these races, Saratoga races for tomorrow, I ran them through the follow the figures steps as well over here. So we have the follow the figures grids. Now, what I'm not going to do in this video is explain what each of these variables up here mean, because again, if you have the follow the figures tutorial, you know already. If you don't have it and you've purchased the thorough capping, you are free to email me and ask for a copy of this as well, in case you want to do the same thing as well. There are some races that the FTF, which I'll call it, there are some races where the FTF factors fit in really well. There are other races where it just really doesn't work well. And those are races with a lot of lightly raced horses and first-time starters, as usual. Okay, so what I did was we have our original data that we went over yesterday in the first video I did, and we have our selections based off those videos. So, or based off this chart here. Now, what I did was I compared when I ran these horses through the follow the figures, and this was a bad race to use the FTF on because this was a main race, and if you could see all these 77s, that means this horse only ran one race. All that was pulled off his last race, so I wasn't able to pull a lot of different variable type figures. Same thing with the 5-horse. The 5-horse is coming off one race, and that's why we have all these 75s here. But your other races, you'll see that I had a lot to choose from. And another reason why I don't use follow the figures as a standalone is because I don't think everything's about the buyer figures or the Briz figures, depending on what PPs you're using. And that's why I just use this as a supplemental backup at times. When I do what I did last night, handicap a couple days ahead of time, the next day I'll have an opportunity to take a look and see if I made any mistakes anywhere. And then if I have time, I could run either the FTF or I could run horses through the pace and velocity grids if I need to as well. I chose to skip this step, and I chose to go with the follow the figures instead. So let's take a look on how much things changed. In race number 1, my original selections were 2, 7, 4, and 1. And I'm not going to focus on why, because I did that in the last video. We're just going to see how much that opinion changes when we add the FTF. Now, what I have is I have 2 ratings. Over here, this is strictly just off the FTF grid. Okay, if I were using just the FTF grid to handicap this race, my selections in the order of total points, power points, would be a tie between the 2 and a 7, the 5, and then the 1. Okay? I look over here, we have a 2741, 2751, and then this final rating incorporates an average between what we had here as our final TC rating after matrix figures and qualitative data, and averages it with the FTF data, and we come out to a 751. So this race to me is a clear-cut 2-7, but what happens is when we add in the FTF data, the 5 shows up at the party, where the 4 horse was the one that showed up here. So what I've done is I've created, and I didn't do this for the first time, I throw this in the Discord usually. I've created 2 depth grids. And what I use the depth grids for is both vertical and horizontal exotics. If I'm playing pick 4s, I might look at this and say, okay, if the pick 4 started in race 2, I might go a 2-7 with a 1-2-6 with a 1. Well, there's nothing in the 5th race, but let's say I was playing a pick 3. I might play some different tickets. 2-7 over 1-2-6 over 1. 1-2-4-7 over 6 over 1-3-4-6. So this tells me the length of the depth for that race. My short depth would be a 2-7, and my deeper depth would be a 1-2-4-7 if I was using the straight TC grid. Now that I've added the follow the figures grid, if you notice the 5 horse shows up at the party, I still keep 2-7 as my short leg, but I no longer have a middle. The mid range or the mid depth I like to keep at 3, and then the deep depth is 4 and more. 4 or more. So I have a 2-7 over 1-2-4-5-7 for the short and the deep for race number 1 or race number 2. Remember, race 1 was the hurdles, and I'm not even going to look at that race. So hopefully you guys understand what I'm doing here. I'm going to compare these 2 charts and see what kind of difference the follow the figures addition to the TC chart makes. If all of a sudden I see the 5 showing up in the trifecta, where I wouldn't have had it if I would have played 2-7 over 1-2-4-7 over 1-2-4-7, if the 5 steps in there, then there's some validity there. And if I see that validity over and over again, I may just have to add that FTF data to this grid, and then I will create new grids and throw them into the thorough capping download, which I want to keep this always evolving. I never want to say that we are completed and finished, and I eventually want to go and update the TC Deluxe or the TC Deluxe tutorial, and anybody who's ordered it, I have your email addresses, send out the new update. But that takes a little bit of time. I don't want to just rush through that. I got to make new videos for it. So we'll see how this works. Same thing with race 3 now. I had the 6, and we're going to take a look at it. But all of a sudden, the FTF data tells me to use when I add it, tells me to use the 2 instead of the 6 as my short leg. So when I see that, if I'm putting together a pick 4 now, for tomorrow for a consensus of these 2 grids, I'm not going to single in race 3. If anything, I'm going to go either 2 deep with the 2-6, or I'll go 1-2-6 in that leg. But we'll see if the 4 all of a sudden shows up in the exotics. That just shows that the FTF data added has helped boost the TC rating to a point where all of a sudden the 4 is a horse that's now a valid horse. So what I'm looking for is there validity in adding the follow the figures data to the original TC rating data. So let's look at race number 3. Race number 3, I had a 2-6-1-7, and this 6 was a class dropping speed horse, and that's the only reason why. No, not the only reason, but he did tie for 3rd. But at the same time, he's the only reason why I put him in 2nd. I mean, the 7 shows up more on the matrix side than the 6 does. So if this wasn't here, if anything, he would be my 4th choice and not my 3rd, or not my 2nd. But when I show up over here, if you notice, the 6 does not show up in the FTF data. Okay, But we got to keep in mind that this horse is dropping in class, and he might have had a string. I'm not going to go back to the PPs, but he may have had a string of races that were coming out of the a higher class level, and that's why his average of his last 3 is lower. His last out, his 2 back and 3 back were lower than some of these others. But when I look at just the FTF data, I get a 2741, and when I look at the FTF data incorporated with the TC rating, I get a 2714. Okay, so the 2714, the 4 is now showing up to the party, where I originally had 2617. The 4 shows up third in just FTF data, but nothing here. Nothing. It wasn't tops in any of these categories. It was just high enough in each category to put up a rating that would put it fourth. So I'm not going to put that much credence on the 4, but I will add him into my depth grid in race number 3 in the deep section, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. Now again, I know you might be looking at this going, well, man, there's only 7 horses in this race, and you're using 5 of them. No, I'm not using 5 of them. I'm saying that in the deep legs of an exotic, all 5 of these are the ones that I would trust. And I would leave out the 3, and I would leave out the 5 in a trifecta. And I might go 2-6 over 1-2-6 over 1-2-4-6-7 in a trifecta. So that's all that means there. I mean, I'm not going to play a ticket in a multi-wager, horizontal, 1-2-4-5-7 over 1-2-4-6-7 over 1-3-4-5-6. Then there's an argument there. Well, you know what? You're using 5 of the 7 horses in these 2 races, and you're using 5 of the 8 horses in these 3 races, okay? So I don't want you to misread this and think that we're just playing it safe here and covering it. No, this is where I would go deep, okay? Deep meaning 3rd leg in a try, 4th leg in a super, or that 1 leg of a horizontal where I want to go 5 deep and cover my butt. And that's pretty much what that column there is telling you. All right, let's take a look at what happens in race number 4. Race number 4, we originally have a 1-6-4-3. And we now have the 5 showing up to the party. Okay. 1-3-5-6 in just FTF data. 1-3-5-6 in combined rating between the 2. Which now takes that 6 and makes me wonder, do I leave it as high as it was? Do I put him in a short in the short leg on the depth chart, or do I bump him down a little bit? And again, it all depends on how much credence I want to lend to the fact that I added the FTF data to this. So here's what I decided to do in that race. I decided to go deep with or short with the 1, because the 1 is a standout in all 3 ratings. And you can look across and see. And he was also a standout over here. So he may be, if I play a horizontal, he may be a multi-leg single for me, the 1. And then what I did after that was I just went, I didn't want to separate. I could have set, again, depending on how much I want to value I want to put in this, in the FTF, when I add it to this, I could have left the 6 in the deep leg only. But I don't know who else to toss, because I don't like to go 4 deep in the middle leg. So we have 1 as a short, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 deep. 5 was the 2-year-old, made special weight, skipped it. Race number 6. If you notice, the 7 was originally top pick, and he remains the top pick. But notice what changed here. In my middle depth, I had 2, 3, 7. I decided to change course and go 1, 2, 7 and move the 3 out of there. Let's take a look at why. The 7 horse, again, on top. 7 on top of FTF data and 7 on top of the combined ratings as well points me in the direction of all I need to do is use that 7 as the short play. Now, we have to decide between the 1 and the 2, the 1 and the 2, and the 2 and the 3. Well, what I did was I took a look over here and I said, is it going to hurt that much bumping that 3 down to the third leg? And my answer was no. And it was because the 3 is only showing up in the ability column. And I'm not taking anything away from the ability horse. A lot of times the ability horse will be the horse that if he comes in, he's going to pay a lot of money because he hasn't run that well lately, but he has shown past ability. And it doesn't mean that he's not going to be still on my radar when it comes to win value. But as far as the depth goes in the exotics, I ended up moving him down here. So there might be a try play, 7 over 237 over 1237. And the 3 horse may be at nice odds. There may be a win play with the 3 horse to win. And I might have a exacta play, 127 over 3. Where if the 3 does come in second, it breaks the trifecta. But at the same time, if I may have a shot at getting the exacta with him if I have the 127 finishing in first. All right, so I am covering my angles just because I'm bumping the 3 now down to the deep leg. Okay, again, notice I have the 5 added into the deep leg now as well, and the 5 is because once again the addition of the FTF data only shows up once. So I mean, I really don't even need to add him, but he is showing up tops in the variant number 1 rating, showing up in variant 2 rating. So this is whatever. I mean, the 5 is not, a top play here, but at the same time, I'm not going to nitpick here on whether or not I should leave that 5 there. I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, because if I'm going to single a horse in the first leg of a try, I don't have a problem going 5 deep. I don't want to cut my throat and go 7 over 127 over 1237, and then the 5 comes in, and I was being cheap and I could have had a try, and I don't now because of that reason. Number 7, that's the difficult race, okay? And even when I threw the FTF data in, it even became a more difficult race for me. And here's why. Notice I settled on the 510 as short depth, 3 510 mid, and then 1 2 3 5 6 10. And then when I threw the data in, and this was a race where I really, really wanted to rely on this data over here because this grid was pretty much a mess. And if you remember correctly, yesterday we talked about this one horse was coming out of sprint races. That's why his numbers are kind of bloated here. But at the same time, he's showing really good form in those races as well. And I don't want to penalize this horse and say, you know what? Because you know what? Sprinters come out and they win routes. This is a mile quarter race. There are probably about 7 or 8 of these 10 horses in here that have never ran a marathon race. Okay? So they're all being tested at that distance. And I'm not going to penalize this 2 horse. I shouldn't say the 2 horse, because this is flip-flopped because of the 1A. So when I ran the data, he still comes out on top of the what do you call it? Overall when I add. But if you noticed I didn't finish painting this picture here. Oh, I did. I didn't look down far enough. Okay, if you look at the FTF data, it's a 10.391. Okay, so the 10 horse is still making a show. In fact, he's making a better showing over here than he did over here. The reason I had him second over here is because of that 90 in the final fraction column. Because this is a marathon race, and a race that long, unless you get a clear early leader that's just kind of jogging on the lead, you're more likely to get something coming off the pace to win the race. So I wanted to make sure that that 10 horse was represented here and represented high in the rankings. But over here, when I start adding the figures in, based on the FTF data, he belongs. Okay, in fact, he is my top now in not only FTF data, but when I add that rating to what he had before, which was only a 79.3, that bumps him up to a 85.81. It puts him in the top 4 now over here, where he wasn't in the top 4. He wasn't even in the top 5 in ratings over here. But I still went and I based it off of the totals only, and I have a 13910 over here, and I just based it off of the what do you call it, highest to lowest in the new rating. So the horses we're dealing with are 13910, 13910, and then 5, who's my top play over here. I'm not going to disregard that just because he doesn't show here. Based on the consistency and success we've had off of this grid, there's no way I'm going to now take that 5 horse and just throw him toward the bottom. But what it did was it forced me to now change my depth grid and focus on this 3, the 10, which I already had a focus on, and also the 9, but the 5. And here's what I decided to do depth grid-wise. And again, this is a difficult race. If I go multi-leg wager, I'm going to go the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10 in that leg, with maybe the 7 as a single in that leg. But I have a 3, 5, 10 over 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, because the 9 shows up there twice in the grid on the FTF side. So this is really, really going to be a wide open race in my opinion. We'll see. Okay, race number 8. I originally had a short leg of a 2-6, and then when I combined with the FTF data, I couldn't separate 2-5 into 6, and we'll see why. We had 2-6-5-7 over here. I mean, it was coming out 2-5-6 anyway over here. But now, there's a little kind of reassurance here that the 5 does belong when I look at the figure data only. I mean, he puts him on top of FTF only, and it puts him on top of the whole entire ratings now. So I cannot go and say, okay, well, I'm just going to keep the 2 and the 6, because the 2 and the 6 are interchangeable over here. 6 doesn't even show up in FTF data. He does over here, and the only reason he shows up over here is because the ratings over here boosted him. So what I did was I decided on a 2-5-6 in race 8, and then a 1-2-4-5-6-7. Where'd the 4 and the 7 come from? The 4 and the 7 are now coming from my 4th selection over here. And again, nothing exciting. Just finishes 4th in the ratings. And I look over here, nothing exciting either. So if I was going to leave a horse out of that string of 6 that I just listed, it would probably be the 7 horse. The 4 is showing up twice. And when I compare the 4 over here to the 7, the 4 doesn't show up higher than the 7. So I don't want to toss any of them. And again, in my depth grid, I just have a 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's a race there. Again, if I was going to play a try, I might go 2, 5, 6 over 2, 5, 6 over 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 for 50 cents. Or I might even go a superfecta, 2, 5, 6, 2, 5, 6 over all of these in the leg. But I would try to find my best way to keep my ticket, as low as possible. Because one thing about playing small, you could lose 3, 4 races in a row and then hit the next one and you're ahead. Where if you're dumping $25, $30 into a race and you lose your first 4 or 5, you're either chasing or you're quitting. You're done for the day. I'm down $150. I'm done. Or you're chasing it, and in return, possibly losing more money on top of that as well. But you keep your plays around $12 a race. You lose 3 in a row. You're down $36 to $40. Then all of a sudden you hit a nice 50-cent try that pays $60. You're back up now, and that's the way. I'm not going to tell you should, but that's the way I've always approached this game, to give myself the best shot at the end of the day to be able to take some money out of my account at the end of the day and be able to deposit it into my bank and leave what I want to leave in there for the next day. Money management is more important than the whole gambling aspect. It always will be. Okay, race number 9, the 6 horse is my short. All of a sudden, the 1-6 comes into play. If you notice, the 1 got moved all the way from the deep leg over here. It wasn't even a midway 1-6. It was a 6 and then a 1-4, 6, 7. Now the 1 jumps all the way over here and becomes a 1-6. Why? Because when you look at the grid, and we already seen this before, 6, 1, 7, 4. 6 is a standout on this side. And the 6 ties with the 1 here in the overall when you combine these. But the 1 is actually my top FTF play. And he's only my top FTF play simply because of the 89 average of his last 3 figures. Notice he's not in blue or yellow anywhere else. I mean, he very well could be. I could have threw a yellow here. He's only 1 point shy of the 3 and 5. I could have threw a yellow here. He's actually the next highest from the 91. But what I'm getting at is he stayed consistently somewhat under the radar, but at the same time, he stayed consistent with his numbers enough to put him, and then you throw that last 3 average in there, and then 94 on the late speed, puts him on top of my second. I'm sorry, second to the 3. I have the 3, 1, 6, 2, but he actually ties the 6 now in overall rating, 1, 6, 7, 4. So again, now I have a horse that's showing up on top of my FTF data that didn't show up at all over here in the TC rating grid. The 3 horse. So that begs the question, is this a horse that kind of flew under the radar over here? I mean, we are looking at 3 different qualitative. We're looking at a turn move on a class drop with a trainer notation. He would have been my 5th choice if I went 5 deep, but I'm not going to go 5 deep out of 7 on the ratings. And that 92.1 was good enough to, when you add this data to him, you know, to put him on top here in the FTF. But at the same time, because of this showing over here, he does not show up in the combined ratings, combined average. So again, there's a dilemma. When you add more data, it could help you. You know, this could help me point to this could point me now to a horse that normally before I wouldn't have used in an exotic, but at the same time it could be pointing me in a false direction as well. So what did I do on the grid? I went with the 6 on top because the 6 is the standout. Well, yeah, the 6 is not, so I don't want to say a standout, but the 6 is actually on top here. Shows up across the matrix factors. Is my top rating getter. I have him 3rd here, but again, this is only simply from figures only. And I said before, figures don't tell you everything. But he's also tied for 1st. So this very well could have been a 6-1, 1-6. I just put the 1 first because 1 is a lower number than the 6. So the 6 was the short depth, and then I used 1, 4, 6, 7. And I actually left the 3 out. So I probably should change that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I left it out over here. I added the 1, 6. Sorry. I always make one mistake. You know that. I added the one over here as well because of the showing on the right side of the grids. 1, 6 or 3, 1, 3, 1, 6. But what I failed to do was add the 3 into the deep part of the grid over here. So I got to make a note to add the 3. I will do that. And I'm going to post both of these. I'm going to post this one here in the Discord for those of you guys that are in the Discord. And then race number 10, we had a short of a 6. I now moved it to a 6-7. The middle depth stays at 5, 6, 7. and the deep stays with 3, 5, 6, 7. So there wasn't a whole lot of changes going on there, with the exception of we had 6, 7, 5, 3. The 6 stands out in blue on the matrix factors. Is my top TC rating. The 7 is a class dropper, pace setter. And this is a sprint on the turf, if I remember correctly. And the 7 all of a sudden kind of tells me you may want to use me, or don't forget about me here. And when I see this data, and I'm go back here and I'm reminded of this, then I can't leave that horse out. Now the 5 horse was my third here. He's my third if I use just FTF data. He's my second now in the combined data. When I combine these two ratings, here and here, it's enough to move him up to second. So we have 5, 7, 6, 5, 5, 6, 7, 3s, and then the 8 comes in fourth here. So I mean, I don't even know if I threw the 8 in there or not. No, I didn't. But if I'm looking to go one more deeper, I would go throw the 8 in a trifecta in the final leg. Okay, so hopefully you got something out of that video. I wanted to, kind of change the theme a little bit instead of just going back and recapping what I recapped already last night. And hopefully that some people that are using Follow the Figures, you can really get a close look here and follow this and see how it does tomorrow, and even compare how well just this part of the grid does. All right, you may want to take notes right now. 7, 6, 5, 8, 3, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 2, 4. Because honestly, when you the follow the figures is just simply putting down figures. That's it. There's no mental math involved. All you got to do is put down the right figures that you're using. You can make sure you're using the right figures, and the tutorial explains which figures to use, and the grids do the data for you. Okay, the grids in the bold will do the calculations for you. With the exception of this one, you got to do the average or the adjusted, but that's easy to do. The averages, it does it on its own. All you're doing with the late speed is you're doing the same thing you did in the TC grid with the final fraction. It's the same exact thing. 89. 89. Okay, it's the same exact calculation. So this may be a little bit of reinforcement for the FTF users, that because again, this only takes about literally 5 minutes per race, 5, 6 minutes to put all this data in, and then maybe another 3 minutes to paint your picture and do your analysis on what you're looking for. All right. Those that want to go back early on in the early days of my channels, I got a ton of videos on Follow the Figures, and then I started replacing the FTF videos with some matrix system videos on target and ability and so on. And we've evolved to a point where now we are at thorough capping, where we're starting to put all this stuff together and creating again, I hate the term system, but creating a set of methods that are looking at numerous factors and not just 3 or 4 of them. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.